Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're getting into something really powerful, something pretty unsettling actually, from Ernest Becker's classic The Denial of Death. And it's all about this one single terror that, believe it or not, secretly drives, well, pretty much everything we do. Let's just jump right in with Becker's big idea. He says that what we call heroism, it's not really about bravery, not in the way we typically think of it. It's actually a reflex, an almost instinctive reaction to this deep, deep terror of death that we all have buried inside us. So yeah, our greatest ambitions, they're basically a defense mechanism. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to look at what drives heroism, then jump into this tale of two fears. We'll explore the healthy-minded versus the morbidly-minded arguments, see how we cope through what Becker calls the Great Repression, and finally, tackle what this all says about our image of humanity. So, what's really behind heroism? Why do we worship these figures who seem to conquer death? Well, Becker's take is that since forever, really, the hero has been our stand-in. They're the one who can stare into the abyss, right? They can metaphorically go into the world of the dead and, crucially, come back. And by doing that, they're acting out the one victory we all desperately want for ourselves, a win over our own mortality. And you see this pattern everywhere, right? It just repeats across all of history and every culture. Think about it. The shaman who travels to the spirit world and returns. The divine heroes in those ancient mystery cults who come back from the dead. The story of resurrection in Christianity. Heck, even philosophy itself took on this problem. They're all just different ways of grappling with the exact same fundamental question. How in the world do we cope with the fact that our lives are going to end? And that brings us to a huge debate, a real fork in the road when it comes to modern thought. It's a tale of two fears, really. And the central question is this: is our terror of death something we're born with, something just hardwired into us? Or is it something we learn from the world around us? So Becker lays out this debate between two camps. On one side, you've got what he calls the healthy-minded view. They believe fear is all about nurture. It's learned. On the other side, you have the morbidly minded view, and they argue, no, this fear is absolutely natural. It's just part of our biology. Okay, first up, the healthy-minded argument. Their whole position is that this fear we have, it's all a product of nurture. So from this perspective, a child's understanding of death isn't there from the start. It's a really slow process. I mean, a little kid, say up to age 5, they don't have an abstract concept of death. Their world is just what's in front of them. It's only as they grow, as they learn from their parents and see things, that they slowly and pretty reluctantly start to get that life has an end. The anxiety, then, is learned. It's not something they were born with. And the implication of this is huge, right? If the fear isn't natural, that means it's basically a psychological wound. It's something caused by bad experiences, by society, by how we were raised. And if that's true, well, that leads to a pretty hopeful idea. Maybe, just maybe, it's possible to raise a person, a second innocence, who is completely free from the fear of death. Okay, but now let's flip the coin. Let's look at the other side of this argument, the morbidly minded view. And this is the one Becker really leans into. Their argument: this fear is in our nature. It isn't learned, it's universal, it's biological, and there's just no escaping it. The philosopher William James had this amazing phrase for it: the worm at the core. And that just captures it perfectly, doesn't it? It's this idea of an inescapable, gnawing reality that's right at the heart of everything, even our attempts at happiness. It's always there, whether we want to admit it or not. So where's the evidence for this? Well, it comes from two main places. First, you've got biology and evolution. It just makes sense, right? Our early ancestors who were the most afraid were also the most realistic about the dangers around them. They survived, and they passed those fearful genes on. And then you have psychoanalysis, which paints this picture of a child's inner world as just full of terror, confusing magic with reality, having these destructive feelings, and being terrified of getting punished for them. Okay, so this presents a huge paradox. Think about it. If this fear has to be there all the time for us to survive, like a constant hum in the background, how do we function? How do we even get out of bed in the morning without being completely paralyzed by this terror? And this is where Becker brings it all together with his big idea, the Great Repression. He solves this paradox by pointing to a psychological tool we all use, but he says we use it on a massive, lifelong scale. That tool is repression. Now, when Becker talks about repression, he doesn't just mean forgetting something bad happened. No.
This is an active, constant process. It takes energy. It's like we're always working to keep the lid on this pot of fear that's just too overwhelming to look at directly. We have to keep it down just to be able to go about our day.
And we've gotten really good at this. We have all these tools to help us repress. We've got our inner sustainment, that sense of confidence we get from a good childhood. We've got delegated powers, where we basically latch onto our parents' power and make it our own. And maybe the biggest one of all, cultural programming. We just unthinkingly follow the rules of society, this ready-made maze that keeps us busy with work, family, and goals. So we don't have time to think about, well, you know. So at the end of the day, what does this all mean for us? Well, according to Becker, once you understand this deep terror and the massive effort we put into hiding it from ourselves, you're left with two very different pictures of what it means to be human. And here they are, the two paths Becker gives us. On one side, you have the oblivious animal. This is the person who just kind of lets themselves be driven through life. They feel free, but only because they're securely plugged into all the cultural rules. Then you have the overly sensitive animal. This person can't shut out the terror. They're thrown back on their own resources and seem a lot less free to act. And here's the kicker, the great irony. In the end, both of them are least in possession of themselves. Neither one is truly in control.
And you know what? Becker doesn't give us an easy way out. He doesn't say which one is better. He just leaves the choice with us. And it forces you to ask yourself a tough question. Which image of humanity do you choose? Are you running from death by just staying busy and oblivious? Or are you kind of paralyzed by your awareness of it? Which path are you on? Because according to Becker, how you answer that question, well, that pretty much defines your entire life.